Well, we are joined by the one and only, the incomparable Stephanie Burks, instructor of biology at Hinds Community College in Utica, and just in charge of so many great things over there on the Utica campus. And we are in the education training career cluster here in our college career readiness class. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for our friends at Rosa Scott Regional High School, Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. And I think it's cool. You have some of our Velma Jackson alumni as students there at Hinds Community College. So
only if they said good things about me. If they said bad things about me, I don't know who they are. I've never seen them before in my life.
Now, before we get into what all it is you do over there, because I know, it's a lot more that goes into it than people might realize. Talk a little bit about your background, Murrah High School, Millsaps College, because we haven't had a Millsaps alum speak to our class yet, and I know that they do a lot of great things.
There are plenty.
They seem to be forgotten in the shuffle there, but you're a graduate of Murrah High School and then a Millsaps College, which led you to where you are now. So talk a little bit about that educational background coming up.
Absolutely. Okay. Hey, everybody. So absolutely. I did graduate from Murrah High School, but before that, I was in the Army brat. So my mom was in the military for most of my life. So I did a lot of traveling. And when I was about 12 or 13, she got out of the military to take care of my great-great-grandmother, and her home is Jackson, Mississippi. And so that's how I ended back in Jackson. I went to St. Andrews for a little while in like the 6th grade, St. Joe, and then I went to Chastain, and from that I progressed on to Murrah. But the great thing about Murrah, besides the fact that it's just a wonderful high school, is Murrah had a program that was called the Base Pair Program. And so the Base Pair Program was funded by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And the purpose of the Base Pair Program was to introduce high schoolers into STEM education. And so you could do it your junior and senior year of high school. And so while I was at Murrah and, junior and senior year, most people were leaving right after 6th period, I was running across the street trying not to get hit by traffic, going to UMC. And so actually I started working at UMC my sophomore year of high school, but I was able to continue that during high school, which was a wonderful opportunity. I worked with two important scientists, Shelley Tucci and Hamid Bengouzi, who have been committed to not only undergraduate education, but minority STEM education for more than 20 years. So when I graduated there, I did not necessarily know where I wanted to go to college. Actually, I did. I knew I wanted to go to Spelman. I wanted to go to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, since I was young. But my sister was 5, and it was just me, my mom, and my sister. And so I just could not leave them and go to Spelman. So I made the choice to stay in Jackson. My mama was trying to push me to Jackson State. Actually, my mom filled out most of my college applications. But the one college that really stuck to me locally was Millsaps. And the reason Millsaps stuck to me locally was just because they had been reaching out to me for years. I also did a leadership institute called the Hobie Leadership Institute. If anybody is interested in that, it's a leadership institute. I'm on the board of it now, but it's available to juniors and seniors, and it's like a week during the summer. And it just really promotes leadership education, and it looks great on a resume. It's also a great experience. But because of that, I ended up at Millsaps. And Millsaps was hard, y'all. Millsaps was hard. I had a good background at Murrah. I was in APAC. I did all advanced courses, all that good stuff. But Millsaps was very difficult. And my freshman year was a very difficult year. I didn't want to go back my next year. My mama packed my clothes up for me and shipped me out back to school. And so I was a chemistry major there. There was a lot of mental things that I kind of had to deal with, being a Black student at a predominantly white institute. There were things that I had never come across before that I came across. And And that took a toll, but it was still a very wonderful experience. I graduated, thank you, Loda. And I decided that I still wanted to do science. I was a chemistry major, still love science, still love the environment at Millsaps. As I said, my sister was very young at Millsaps College when my mom was working nights, and I was able to bring her with me to my chemistry classes. That was the kind of environment that was at Millsaps, even in the midst of other things that was happening. So my sister grew up at Millsaps with me. She was at the cafeteria, she was at my plays, she was in my dorm. We sold Girl Scout cookies. And so one of the things that I tell my students is it's very important that wherever you go, there is a supportive environment. And even if that supportive environment is not all around, that you find a cluster of people that are invested in not only your success, but your mental, your spiritual, and your physical health as well. And you seek out those people. You don't have to suffer anything alone. So I graduated and I knew I still wanted to do science. So I went across the street again to UMC and I started doing research in biochemistry, which was a great time. I enjoyed research and I knew I wanted to do research. From the program I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be in a lab for the rest of my life. Not really talking to folk, just minding my business, winning Nobel Prizes, but God always has other plans. So from there, I decided to apply to a PhD program in pharmacology and toxicology at UMC. And I realized that I was not doing that for me. I realized that I was doing it for everybody around me who really didn't put any pressure on me to do it. And so you always have to self-reflect and make sure that what you are doing is for you. A lot of times, we think our parents are putting this pressure on us because they want the best for us, but most times parents just want you to be happy. And so I went into that PhD program because I knew I felt like I needed to have a doctor in front of my name, right? And it was wonderful. It was a great experience, but I realized I wasn't happy. And so I was making myself do something I didn't want to do. So I made the hard decision. I had already gone through my thesis. I was writing my dissertation and I was miserable. And I left that program. And while I was in the program, I was teaching adjunct at Hinds to make a little extra money and realized that I loved it. And it was something that I did not have to fight to do. Yeah. So that is how I ended up adjunct at Hinds. I did work at Millsaps for a little while, teaching labs and things of that nature. But I ended up on the Utica campus in 2013. Wow. And I have been here ever since. This campus, of course, is very special because it's an HBCU campus. And so I have had opportunities that I might not have on other campuses. And my trek to education was a winding one and a difficult one. But I have learned so many lessons about myself along the way. And so for the students, you all are young, and there are so many things that you kind of see on social media that show people that look like they kind of have it all together immediately. And that is not the case. Yeah. So I tell my students, your path is your path alone. Yeah. And so comparison is nothing but a road to negativity. Absolutely. And so every step that you take to whatever it is that you want to do, you know that that's your step and it's been ordained for you. So you walk into it proudly. Whatever mistakes happen, there are lessons to be learned. Whatever curveballs are thrown, there are lessons to be learned. And so education gives me the opportunity to reach out to my students all the time. And I like to think I'm making a difference, but you never know. But I enjoy it, and I'm thankful that I am at the position that I am.
Yeah, and before we talk about that, I did want to just talk briefly again about Millsaps. Is that one thing that Millsaps really has to offer that very few institutions in the state offer is that you have very small classes. So if you're a person that would need the attention from a professor that's going to have that personal relationship and a close-knit group, Millsaps could be a good fit for you because there's only about 1,000 students. So you're not going to have a class with several hundred people in it. You're going to have that small class, which I know, especially coming, if a kid was coming from Velma Jackson or even from Madison Central, they have a large class and they've struggled in that environment. Going to Mississippi State or even Jackson State might be a mistake, because you got to look at how you learn and how you're best going to be able to make yourself a better professional when it comes to a college student.
Absolutely. My class, I was a chemistry major, so there were like 10 of us. But so we were very tight knit, but I will tell students, I tell my students all the time, I am not a mind reader. And so whether it is a class of 100 or whether it is a class of 10, it is your responsibility when you are having difficulty grasping any type of information to go talk to your professors. I tell my students, my students have very preconceived notions about who I am and what I will say to them in response, but it doesn't matter, because I'm the one teaching the course. And so to students, whenever you feel like, it's snowballing on you, right? And you don't think you can catch up, you have to talk to your instructors, and an instructor can help you at the beginning of the semester, but it's real difficult to help you at the end of the semester. So you make sure you identify those resources to assist you no matter where you go. Because if I was at Millsaps, even though at Millsaps, if I didn't reach out and talk to my instructors, that would be it. You know what I mean? And at Mississippi State or Jackson State, you still have the responsibility to reach out to those instructors and make sure that you are doing everything you can on your end to succeed. Because that really is on you. It really is going to be on you. And it's not like high school where your teachers see you every single day and they're like, hey, how you doing? Things of that nature. When you get to college, you really have to take responsibility for that. And it's difficult for a lot of students to do.
Yeah. Now, your classes at Hinds, you teach biology and A&P, but you teach that for kids that are not going to major in those areas. Now, people say, well, I don't need this stuff, this is all stupid, but in order to get the degrees that these students seek, they're going to have that class. So being a teacher that teaches that, how does teaching that subject to someone who's not going to major in it translate into skills that they'll use in other fields?
Oh, that's a good question. So I teach non-majors and majors biology. It's one, you have to have a science before you get your degree from Hinds. And so students have to come through me. I don't care how they feel about me. And so I tell my students every time I get a new class, I always ask them what they want to do. And so I have students that are in food sciences, early childhood education, that want to be business owners and things of that nature. And so I always take it upon myself to make sure I am showing where science and life come together, because a lot of times we don't see it that often. So I'm not trying to make them into scientists, but I really do want my students to understand whatever path they're taking, that biology is everywhere and it is consistently affecting their lives. But more importantly, what I like to teach my students is how to critically think. And so a lot of the lessons that I teach in all of my classes are how to process through a series of information that you might not be familiar with. How are we going to go about doing that? So that means whether it is my biology class, whether it is an algebra class, whether it is Western civilization, whatever it is, how to be a critical thinker and effective study habits. Unfortunately, a lot of students do not have the best study habits when they come to me. They are used to just memorizing. And so I have to break students out of the memorization mindset into the critical thinking mindset. And so a lot of what I do is just making students into critical thinkers, helping them process through and be successful whatever path they're taking, because whether they're going to be a business owner, whether they want to go to nursing school, whether they want to own a daycare, they are still going to have a bunch of information that they're going to have to get through and apply it. And so that really is what I like to try to teach them.
Yeah, and one thing that in Madison County schools that we're really pushing is for the students to really look into the community college option.
Please.
Whether it's at Hinds or it's at Holmes or East Central, wherever. because especially at Hinds and on the Raymond and the Utica campuses, and even the Rankin campus, y'all are going to have the exact same classes that they would have at Mississippi State, Ole Miss, at a fraction of the price.
Absolutely.
And especially if they're coming out of high school and they're going to have trouble adjusting to the large classes and the big college environment. It gives them an opportunity to ease into the college lifestyle. And that's
Absolutely.
where I think community college professors really play a huge role in that, in preparing students for that, because like you said, they may be a business owner, or they may be a math major or whatever, but they're going to need those biology classes in order to get that degree. And what people seem to fail to realize is that if you go to community college, they want you to go to the 4-year college after that. It's not something to keep you from getting that.
Right. And so let me tell you the thing about, and absolutely agreed. So not only is there a financial thing, but a lot of times when students come to community colleges, they think they're missing out on things. And I can just speak specifically from my Utica campus. From the Utica campus, our students that come in because of a STEM program that we have, they have been able to do internships. I've had students do internships with Department of Defense. I've had students do internships in countries like Belize. I have had students do internships with NASA. And so there is not only just a bucket of qualified students who have the opportunity to do those internships, but now a lot of companies, a lot of places like NASA, like Nissan and things of that nature are tapping into the community colleges, because if you wait until you get to a 4-year to do internships, you're already behind the gate. And so our campus especially makes those internships available to our students as early as possible. So by the time you get to your 4-year, you've already been doing internships at UMC or USM or NASA already. And then you go to your 4-year and you already have those connections. And so we try our best to build those connections with those, not only just the companies and the businesses, but the schools as well. So we have direct paths with Jackson State, direct paths with Alcorn. We're working towards direct paths with places like Tuskegee as well. So we're trying our best to make sure, especially on this campus, but Hinds as a whole, to make sure that our students have a pathway to success that starts at Hinds, but takes them wherever they need to go. So community colleges really are an untapped resource. And, everybody's workforce is looking at it now. Their partnerships with KLLM, their partnerships with Nissan, their partnerships with Vertex and Continental on the CTE side. And then you have the academic side as well. So whatever you want to do, there's a pathway for it in a community college, preferably Hinds, but there is a pathway for it at a community college. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Hinds is one of the few HBCU community colleges in the country.
Yes, there are only
Mississippi, but there's Coahoma and Hinds in Mississippi, but there's not many HBCU community colleges. So if you wanted to just do the HBCU experience your first 2 years and then go to Ole Miss or another PWI, that's a great option for you, and it would give you a very diversified education.
Absolutely. And we definitely have that experience here. We have a lot of instructors that are part of the Divine Nine. So we're always having sorority, fraternity things going on here. And we do our best to make sure that our students here get a real experience to what that looks like. So yeah, absolutely.
And the last two Mr. Freshmen at the Utica campus have been Velma Jackson alums.
Have they really?
Yeah. Casey Jones and Ezekiel Harris are both Velma Jackson alums. That's the last two Mr. Freshmen at the Hinds Utica campus.
Ezekiel was Velma Jackson.
Yep.
Oh wow! Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we do have that pipeline already created. So I hope that our Biology Jackson students definitely look into Hinds as an option. Now, before I get to students' questions, and I got some good ones, we got to talk about your STEM program you have. And we're about to talk about the STEM cluster anyway.
Absolutely.
So you guys have done some amazing stuff with some of these internships you've done, and you've had a huge part in doing that. So talk a little bit about that, because this really is
Yeah.
what you're able to do there.
So one of the things, because we are designated as an HBCU, is we are able to tap into a lot of funds that are specific for HBCUs and community colleges. So that gives us a really great bucket of opportunity. And so we do have what is called the STEM Up program. The STEM Up program is a program that is designated towards students that are interested in STEM. And so what it does is it kind of puts them on a pipeline to where they want to go, but more importantly, it does introduce them to research. It introduces them to internship possibilities. And so STEM Up program has actually been around for a really long time. It was here before I got here in 2013. And so that particular program covers cost for our students when they're here for their 2 years. Not only covers their cost, but it encourages them to do internships. So our students do internships with places like My Brother's Keeper, places like UMMC. Again, students have gone to Belize Department of Defense with those particular types of programs, and they've had the opportunity to present their research at the Mississippi Academy of Sciences, which happens every February. In addition to that program, we also have the NASA Community College Aerospace Scholars Program, which is an initiative by NASA to tap into community college students. And so that particular program, with successful completion, our students are able to apply to internships to NASA. From that program, we've had about 5 students that have completed successful internships at particular NASA centers across the country as well. And so we're always making sure that our students, whether they be in the STEM program or not, are taking advantage of every opportunity that is available to them. And a lot of opportunities are specific to community college students for the reasons that we have talked about. So there are a lot of good things that are definitely happening on this campus.
Yeah, and we have the drone program at our Votech Center, and we also have our engineering academy at Ridgeland and on our Votech Center. So those students, that will be a great pipeline for them coming from some of our other campuses to really look into that STEM Up program, which
Absolutely
is a great pipeline. And having that experience already could just be a gold mine for you as far as internships and getting into a great field that needs a lot of young people right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so I got a few questions from the students.
Oh God, here we go.
Most of these are 9th graders.
Okay.
This one is Donovan Smith. This
Hi,
is a great
Donovan.
question. And he asked, how do you create an engaging learning environment for your students?
Okay, so first and foremost, I always ask my students what they need from me. Okay, so a lot of times I have to take into account that our students learn very different ways. I don't like to talk too much. And so a lot of times I let my students do the talking. And so I like to start off with interesting things that I may have seen. I like to start with interesting things that may have been on Facebook that are not correct, and we kind of discuss those. My students always kind of start off with questions every day of something of interest to them. But I really do try my best to make my classroom a conversation. We still have things that we have to get through, but I really make sure I make my classroom a conversation, but that I can't just do that. So I hold my students responsible for the information. And when they're responsible for the information, then we're able to really engage. It's hard to engage with students when they ain't looked at nothing. So first thing I do is I hold my students responsible for preparing before they come to the class. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and they don't have to know everything, but you got to at least look at it. So a lot of times students will be like, well, they don't engage me. It's hard to engage when you haven't looked and prepared for the class. You know what I mean? So I put a lot of responsibility on my students for their learning. And then as we go through it, I try my best to shape it. My students spend a lot of time on the board. We spend a lot of time kind of just having real discussions. I do interactive things. I try to do Kahoots and things of that nature, but I really find like making it a conversation, getting on the board, fleshing that stuff out really works out well for my students.
Yeah, and one thing that I think a lot of teachers can agree on is that those communication skills are not being taught enough. And these people want to get so mad at us for making them present things, but it's I don't care what field you're going into, you got to be able to talk to people. You can't.
And you have to be able to sell yourself. You know, the elevator speech, we talk about that all the time. Effective communication is so important. I tell my students, you know, I am more inclined to help you if I know who you are.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times students want to sit in the corner and not interact and things of that nature, but they need to realize that we take note of that. And so if it's the end of the year and I see a student that's sitting on a 69.5 or 4.5 or something, and I know that they have been an active communicator and they've really been doing their best, I'm more inclined to help. So it's very important, students, that you get out of your comfort zone. I know a lot of times it's easy to be sequestered and stay away, but sometimes that participation can really make the difference because you're going to need recommendations.
Yeah,
And one of the
and that makes you a much better employee as well.
oh my God, yeah, because that's one of the big things employers talk about now is the lack of communication that a lot of their workforce have, that they don't know how to effectively communicate or relay information verbally, so we have to get out of that.
Especially if you're facing any type of customer. It's so, because people want to complain, but then what have you done? So it's such a big deal. And
Agreed.
I'm glad we're agreeing on that. Now this is London Lot, and she asked, what event from your childhood do you think was the biggest factor into your decision to get into your current job?
Oh, okay. So, I don't know about, I can't say for sure education, but I can say science. And I remember, my mom was a biology major. And so I was allowed to dig in dirt, cut up worms, all kind of stuff. And my mom never bothered me about it. So I would say just having that supportive environment of being inquisitive really did gear me towards science. But I not only did I do science, I did, I did musicals, I did theater, I did a lot of things. And I think the educational environment I was in allowed me the opportunity to tap into a lot of things and really explore so many facets of things that I love. But I remember when I went to St. Andrews, I went my 5th grade, we were transitioning from Fort Hood to Jackson. And I remember the first day I got there, the teacher's name was Mr. Davis. And I remember I walked in class and they were cutting open a pig heart. And that was in the 5th grade. And I was like, this is awesome. And so like one day we were cutting open a pig heart. The next day we were talking about the solar system and astrology and astronomy. And so I just recognized the breadth and depth of science. And I guess I've always kind of been an educator. Like I've always been able to explain things. My mom was always very patient with me. So I've always been able to explain things and talk about things. And so the educator's probably always been in me. But those type of experiences I had during my childhood, being able to go to UMC and do research as a 14-year-old, all of those things really shaped the science part of me.
Oh yeah. Now this is a great question. This is Kentrell Charleston, and he asked, what is your favorite class to teach and why?
Oh, wow. Gee whiz. So I love so I love teaching all my classes. But I think I gear more toward anatomy and physiology. That's one of my favorite courses to teach, just because students are able to kind of see the buildup and how it leads to organ systems in the body. So I really do love teaching that. But I also, we're actually in the process of developing a bioethics curriculum here. And so I don't know how many of you all are familiar with bioethics, but it's just what it says. And so we get to explore things like Henrietta Lacks. We get to explore things like the Tuskegee experiments. We get to explore things like the Jackson water crisis and food deserts. And so I think the types of courses that allow me to not only tie in science, but tie in how society is a part of it really does interest me. I spend a lot of time, because I teach a majority of African-American students, I do spend a lot of time kind of talking about the place that science has in their history. And there are a lot of things that they don't know, like the science behind sickle cell anemia and things of that nature. And so I'm always kind of talking about those things. So I would say all of it, because I'm always trying to find a new way to tie it into their real life experiences. So I'm always on my toes with it.
Absolutely. Now, this is Quinaja Walker, and she asked, what kinds of obstacles do you face as a Black woman in your field?
Oh man. So yeah, it's different for me now, because I'm at an HBCU and most of our faculty look like me. But I will be very honest, when I was in graduate school, being a woman was very difficult. I was told on more than one occasion that I would not be able to be an effective scientist because I would end up getting pregnant and having a family and not wanting to fulfill those requirements as a scientist. Oh yeah. So there was a lot of boldness that was said to me when I was young and I didn't know no better. But now the obstacles I face are really, they are not as overt anymore. And so I have to work every day to make sure that I am not only presenting my best version of myself for me, but for my students and for my school as well, my campus as well. And so I guess the obstacle I face is having to always stand as a representative of my campus, of my students, you know, and an advocate for that as well. And so there are a lot of times just in general where there may be inequities, and I have to be able to, and others like me have to be able to stand up and find a way to effectively speak about those inequities. So that really is, that's a more difficult thing.
Yeah, and you're in a unique situation because you really get to show that the science and STEM fields really need more women, and I mean, and just need more young people in general. But
Absolutely.
with the way the industry of the world is going, these STEM jobs are going to keep growing and growing and growing. So these STEM skills cannot be stressed enough, whether it be on the engineering, the science, or the IT side. They're just so needed because the people in those jobs are aging out. The new technology is what has to be learned. The new skills have to be learned, and that's where you and the people in your field really come into play, because it's such a big deal. I just got one more from the students. This is Haley Luckett, and she asked, "Do you think your experience at Millsaps helped you in your career now?"
Oh, absolutely. Millsaps academically is top tier. So I had some of the best instructors, and not only some of the best instructors, but also some of the funnest instructors. I had an instructor, he taught me physical chemistry, and whenever it was time for a test, he would come showed up as Darth Vader. He would come in the door and he'd just be like Darth Vader at the door. And so I would definitely say that because of the small classes, I had instructors that had been there for 40 and 50 years that loved it just that much. And so, yeah, that definitely did it shaped my ability to relay information to my students. It shaped my ability to be more human around my students as well. They don't need to know everything, but you know, there's nothing wrong with really connecting with your students on shared life experiences to let them know that they're not going through anything that you ain't been through. So I had a great, in the midst of all the little snafus at Millsaps, I would suggest it to anybody. It is a wonderful place. I was able not only to be a chemistry major, but I was in choir, I did plays, I was able to really traverse all aspects of academia because that's what that school supported.
And that's scholarships as well. For those, we got great music programs at all of our schools. If somebody wants to keep doing that, you can get, at least a couple $1,000 scholarship money.
You sure can.
You go to rehearsal twice a week.
And that's it. Chamber singers allowed me to be able to go to Europe, New York, everything, traveling, what they paid for it, and so definitely tap in. If you love something, give it a chance when you get to college. I know a lot of times we have our mindset on what we want to do and we just know it. That's fine, but don't be afraid to try something new because you just never know. And not that it might change your trajectory, but you might be able to intertwine both of them together into something phenomenal. So give it all a chance.
Yeah, especially if there's scholarships involved. And I know
money, yes.
And I know at the Hinds and at the Utica and the Raymond campuses, they both have great music programs that really offer some great scholarship and pipelines into the university music programs. Yes. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you always for joining us so much. But before we go, why does the education field and the STEM field need these young people to really consider changing the face of these industries?
But well, STEM field, because good God, every day, right? There is a necessity for STEM, cybersecurity, medical, research, everything. There's just a place for it. And unfortunately, it's not being pushed enough, but luckily there are programs like yours that are really introducing students to that. And it's because we need you. Every time you wake up and you get in your car, you take your medicine, you do anything, there was a scientist behind that. And so we have to make sure that we are staying ahead of what's going on in our world. There are going to be needs for conservationists. There are going to be needs for people who are able to traverse what technology looks like, and you all are doing it already. So you might as well get paid for it. And it's so much so that there are companies like NASA and other tech companies that are tapping into high schoolers for ideas. So they recognize that you all are burgeoning with so much possibility. And so we need you all, because I can only educate for so long. Somebody else has to come through and inspire the next generation. And in the midst of everything we say about education, I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world. So yeah.
And I also think it's important to note too, these non-STEM companies are going to hire STEM professionals.
Absolutely.
One of the friends of the class works for the Department of Revenue, does not know jack crap about finance, but he runs their server.
Absolutely.
So no matter what company it is, they're going to hire tech people, they're going to hire STEM people, and that will not change.
That will not change. STEM's not going anywhere.
Science skills cannot be downplayed enough. And a great foundation to get it right there at Hinds Community College.
Absolutely.
So Stephanie Burks.
Yes.
Community College, Utica campus. As always, it is a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're always welcome. I will talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Y'all take care.
See ya.